Then they do this really weird and interesting thing. They take a piece of metal like this, right? They have the saxophone like this. They grab a leak light, they put it into the instrument, and then they want to level a pad like this pad right here. You see that pad moving? They want to level that one. What they do is they take this piece of metal and they put it on the tone hole, the brass tone hole that they took so much care to level, right? And then they put it under the key that they made with no tension. And they put in exactly the way they wanted. And then they go like this. Then they go, and they push on the other side. And they push on here and they bend the key, right? Now, they bend the key because heating the shellac and moving the pad around would take too much time. But when you bend a key, here, look, here's a key and it's mounted here on a post and it's mounted here on a post, okay? Now I'm gonna grab the key here and let's say that it's mounted on post, but just for fun, I'll grab it right here. I'll grab it right here. And I'm gonna take this key and I'm gonna bend it like this. See that? What part of the key just bent? Maybe this part. Maybe it was this part here. Maybe it was up in here where the pad cup is hooked to the spine, and maybe it's over here where my pliers were. If there were two posts holding this key, maybe it would be where the posts are connected to the... In college, when I was in grad school and I'm doing this and I'm saying, okay, this is a saxophone pad and it's over a tone hole. It's a little leather thing and it's over a tone hole. I must need flatter pads because they don't all go in the same. Then I started making pads, which I do now, and I have a pad factory right behind me. And the pads I made, they didn't go in any better. Perfectly flat pads didn't go in any better. So then why, if every pad is a pad, why do saxophonists struggle so much with leaks? It's the worst problem. The pad hits the tone hole, why do they leak? Why don't they all just go in the same? Why is one so difficult? If you were 100 technicians listening to me and I said, raise your hand if you think every pad goes in the same, not one of you would raise their hand. So I set out in college to figure it out. And I figured out that there are 5 variables. And if I fix them all, then every saxophone pad is going to install the same. We straighten them out like this. Whack, whack, whack on the bench. Then when the saxophone body itself is absolutely straight, then we take out all the dents. We make sure that you're making sure that all the posts are lined up. And what you're doing here is creating a canvas, remanufacturing this saxophone and taking things like dent balls and putting them onto a dent rod and get that inside the saxophone and use that to straighten it out. Fixing the neck with various tools, like this is a neck tool for making the neck fit inside the tenon, this part here. And then make sure that the neck fits in here. And for that, we're using tools like this that looks like a can opener to make the neck bigger. And then if we make it too big, we're using tools like this. That's a shrinker to make the neck smaller. For what it's worth, I make all these tools. And then we're using a series of collets like this, and the neck fits inside there, and we shrink it down. At this point, the instrument is physically better than it ever was at the factory. It never had this kind of love. And why didn't it have this kind of love? Because this process that I'm telling you takes us about 3 or 4 weeks, and you would pay a lot more. 32 hours of labor to make an alto saxophone in Paris. And it takes us about 65 to overhaul one. It takes us about 55 hours to overhaul a brand new one. It takes us longer to overhaul it than it does to make it because we're doing it with this different paradigm, right? But at that point, when all the pads are glued in and everything is ready to go and it plays really well, that's when it gets to the part that I really love, which is sort of the tuning and the toning. I'm going to show you kind of what happens after the saxophone is basically set up and it's playing well. And that's kind of the tuning, toning, and modification. If you want a saxophone to play in tune, get a saxophone that plays in tune. And I thought, that's silly because this brass thing I should be able to melt this down and turn it into a saxophone that plays in tune. I should be able to melt it down and turn it into a trumpet. Why can't I make a saxophone play in tune from a saxophone that doesn't play in tune? And so I went about figuring it out, and I did. I got it. I can make any saxophone play in tune.